The real threat isn't evil, it's stupidity. Let me ask you something you may have never considered before. What if the biggest danger to humanity isn't malevolence, or greed, or corruption, but something far more banal? What if the gravest threat we face is stupidity? Not the kind of stupidity that makes you laugh when someone trips over their own shoelaces, but a deeper, more insidious kind of stupidity. The kind that crashes civilizations, erodes institutions, and undermines the very fabric of human progress without even realizing it. Sounds dramatic, right? But I promise you this idea, if you truly absorb it, might just change the way you see the world forever. I'm talking about Carlo Cipolla's basic laws of human stupidity. Now, if you've never heard of him, Cipolla was an Italian economic historian who laid out one of the most disturbingly accurate frameworks of human behavior I've ever encountered. And get this, it's not a joke, it's not satire. It's a deadly serious analysis of why things go wrong in society over and over again, no matter how much progress we seem to make. He argued that stupidity, not evil, is the true silent killer of human flourishing. Why? Because while evil at least has a direction, stupidity is chaotic. It's unpredictable. And worst of all, it's everywhere. Think about it. When someone is evil, you can anticipate their motives. You can prepare, you can resist, but the stupid person, they don't know they're causing harm and they don't care. They operate without logic, without foresight. They act in ways that damage not only others, but themselves. The thief wants to steal your wallet. A tyrant wants to control your mind. But a stupid person, they'll burn down the house you're both living in out of sheer oblivion. And you'll be left wondering how it all fell apart.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Let me share Cipolla's most terrifying insight. The proportion of stupid people in any group, society, or organization is always underestimated. Always. No matter how educated, advanced, or enlightened a society becomes, stupidity scales with population. It doesn't discriminate by class, race, profession, or ideology. That's the kicker. It's universal. And we keep acting like we've left it behind. Now, pause for a moment. Look around you. Think of the last time something in your life went completely off the rails, some policy at work, some disastrous decision by a leader, some absurd piece of legislation. Was it malevolence, or was it just stupidity on full display? But here's the part that hurts the most. We're not just surrounded by stupidity, we enable it. We reward it, we promote it, because stupidity wears many masks. It's not always loud or obnoxious. Sometimes it's polite. Sometimes it's confident. Sometimes it's dressed in a three-piece suit or tweets from a blue checkmark account. And because we mistake confidence for competence, we let these people steer the ship even when it's headed straight for the iceberg. Are you starting to see the danger? And before you get too comfortable thinking this is about other people, let's get brutally honest. We're all stupid sometimes. Every single one of us. Cipolla's laws aren't just about them, they're about us. The real question is, how often are we acting in ways that harm others and ourselves without even knowing it? How often are we making decisions based on impulse, ego, or ignorance, then doubling down when we're proven wrong? Now, let's flip this conversation. If stupidity is so dangerous, then why don't we treat it like the threat it is? Why don't we build educational systems, political structures, and cultural norms that are designed to detect and dilute stupidity rather than reward it? Here's a possible answer. Because stupidity is invisible. It doesn't show up on a resume. It doesn't announce itself in meetings. It hides behind bureaucracy, tradition, and groupthink. And unlike evil, stupidity doesn't provoke outrage, it provokes indifference. We shrug it off, we meme it, we laugh at it, but we don't take it seriously. And so it thrives. Let me ask you something painful. What if your biggest regrets were caused not by intentional harm, but by your own stupid decisions? What if the worst mistakes in your life weren't because someone betrayed you, but because you didn't ask enough questions? Didn't think deeply enough? Didn't challenge your own assumptions? That's what makes this topic so hard to confront. Because it forces us to realize that the enemy is often within. There's a quote I keep returning to from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the German theologian who resisted the Nazis. He said, "Stupidity is a more dangerous enemy of the good than malice." And this was a man who lived through one of the most evil regimes in history. Why would he say that? Because evil depends on stupid people to carry out its plans. Evil is a strategist, but stupidity is the foot soldier. Without stupidity, evil is just a madman shouting into the void. So here's the challenge I want to leave you with right now. Are you willing to confront the ways you might be stupid? Not just wrong. Not just uninformed. But truly dangerously stupid in some areas of your life. If you're not, then you may already be under its spell. Because here's the truth. Intelligence isn't the opposite of stupidity. Wisdom is. Intelligence is knowing facts. Wisdom is knowing what to do with them. You can have a PhD and still be stupid. You can be street smart and still be stupid. Stupidity isn't about what you know, it's about whether your actions consistently harm others and yourself, and whether you even realize it. And now we're going to dive deeper. How stupidity wins without trying and why good people let it. Let's begin with a brutal truth. Stupidity doesn't need to try hard to win. It doesn't need strategy, planning, or even intention. It spreads like a virus, silently and effortlessly infecting systems, conversations, and decisions until everything becomes slower, dumber, and more dysfunctional. And what's worse? Good people, thoughtful, intelligent, well-meaning individuals often let it happen. Not because they want to, not because they're weak, but because they underestimate just how powerful and corrosive stupidity can be when left unchecked. Think about any large institution, a government, a corporation, a school system, or even a social movement. They often start with a purpose, with vision, with ideals, but as they grow, something starts to shift. Bureaucracy sets in. Meetings multiply. Inefficiencies pile up. People begin making decisions not based on truth or clarity, but on convenience, fear of rocking the boat, or blind obedience. This is when stupidity starts to win. Not because someone evil took control, but because no one had the courage or clarity to stop the decay. We let dumb ideas pass because we're tired. We let nonsense policies stand because we don't want to offend. We nod in agreement when we should be raising our hand and saying, wait, that doesn't make any sense. And here's the paradox. The more we try to avoid conflict, the more stupidity spreads. It doesn't need a manifesto or a plan. It simply fills the vacuum left by silence. It thrives in environments where people are afraid to speak truth, where critical thinking is replaced by slogans, where complexity is flattened by dogma. It grows stronger every time someone says, well, that's just how things are, or that's above my pay grade, or who am I to question it? Let's bring this closer to home. Have you ever watched a group of smart people make a truly stupid decision together? If you have, you'll know this chilling feeling. The moment when you realize everyone in the room is thinking, this is a bad idea, but no one is willing to say it. That's not evil. That's not sabotage. That's collective stupidity at work enabled by fear, passivity, and the illusion that someone else will fix it. Cipolla warned us of this exact dynamic. His laws describe a terrifying category of people, the profoundly stupid, those whose actions harm others and also harm themselves. But equally dangerous, he said, are the helpless, those who allow themselves to be harmed because they believe they're powerless. And let's face it, most of us fall into that second category more than we'd like to admit. We stay quiet in the face of absurdity. We go along with decisions that make no sense. We obey rules that are clearly broken. Why? Because we're afraid of being labeled difficult. because we want to fit in, because it's easier to complain privately than to challenge publicly. But here's the thing, stupidity only thrives when wisdom stays silent. And too often, the people who have the most insight, the most clarity, the most potential to resist stupidity are the first to retreat. They overthink, they doubt themselves. They wait for the perfect moment to speak up that never comes. Meanwhile, the loudest, least thoughtful voices dominate the room. And before you know it, the stupid ideas become the official policy, the group consensus, the new normal. So here's the question I want to plant in your mind. Where in your life are you allowing stupidity to win by default? Is it in your workplace where you stay silent in meetings even though you see the flaws in the plan? Is it in your relationships where you allow toxic patterns to repeat because calling them out would be uncomfortable? Is it in your community where you see injustice or inefficiency, but you tell yourself it's not your place to intervene? This isn't about becoming a crusader. It's not about arrogance or thinking you're smarter than everyone else. It's about radical responsibility. It's about refusing to be the person who sees the fire and doesn't pull the alarm. Because every time we let stupidity pass unchallenged, we become its accomplice. And the cost of that complicity adds up bit by bit, day by day, until we wake up one morning and wonder how the world got this broken. Now, here's the wild part. Stupidity doesn't even know it's winning. That's what makes it so terrifying. It doesn't celebrate victories. It doesn't strategize. It doesn't even recognize itself. It just keeps spreading through inaction, through blind repetition, through inertia. And unless we actively resist it, unless we make the uncomfortable choice to speak truth in the face of nonsense, it will always have the upper hand. So let's be honest, are you part of the resistance or are you part of the quiet surrender? That's not a rhetorical question. That's a fork in the road. Because the longer we wait to confront stupidity, the deeper it roots itself in our systems, our culture, and our minds. And if we don't push back now, when will we? The 4 faces of stupidity and how to recognize them in yourself before it's too late if stupidity is the true silent threat to our world. And if it's not confined to other people, then we have to go deeper. We have to turn the mirror around and ask the hardest question of all: how does stupidity show up in me? Because the truth is, we all wear the mask of stupidity at times. And if we don't learn to recognize its faces, especially in ourselves, we might accidentally become the very force we claim to resist. Cipolla described stupidity not as a lack of intelligence, but as a pattern of behavior actions that harm others and oneself without any gain. But it's not always obvious. Stupidity isn't just someone shouting nonsense in a comment section. It's far more subtle and far more dangerous when it hides behind good intentions, self-righteousness, or blind certainty. So let me walk you through what I call the 4 faces of stupidity. These are the archetypes, the patterns, the warning signs. And if you're brave enough to see yourself in them, you might just escape their grip. The first face is the blind follower. This is the person who obeys rules, trends, or authority without ever really questioning why. They're not malicious. In fact, they often believe they're doing the right thing. But they outsource their thinking. They say things like, that's just how we do it, or I'm just following orders, or everyone else is doing it. And in doing so, they become vehicles for stupidity. I think of all the historical atrocities that were carried out, not by monsters, but by ordinary people who simply refuse to think for themselves. It's chilling. And it forces us to ask, where in my life am I blindly following instead of thinking? Where am I obeying without understanding? The second face is the confident ignorant. This one is perhaps the most visible in today's world. It's the person who speaks with certainty, even when they have no idea what they're talking about. They mistake confidence for knowledge. They shout their opinions as if they were facts. They dominate conversations, ignore nuance, and reduce complex issues into black and white slogans. But here's the terrifying part. People listen. Because we're wired to trust confidence. We assume loud equals right. And so stupidity climbs the ladder, gets the promotion, wins the argument, not because it's correct, but because it sounds sure of itself. Ask yourself, have I ever clung to a belief just because I didn't want to seem unsure? Have I ever faked understanding just to maintain status or avoid embarrassment? If so, that's a face of stupidity staring back at you. The third face is the self-justifying victim. This one is subtle but incredibly dangerous. It's the person who causes harm but always has an excuse. I didn't mean to. That's just how I was raised. I was just trying to help. This face of stupidity hides behind good intentions. It refuses accountability, and it mistakes being well-meaning for being wise. But the damage is still done. This is the person who gives unsolicited advice, makes reckless decisions, or interferes where they're not needed, all in the name of helping. But they never stop to ask whether their actions are actually helping. They don't consider the unintended consequences. Ask yourself, do I ever assume I'm helping when I haven't actually asked? Do I justify my mistakes instead of learning from them? And finally, the fourth face is the passive enabler. This one might be the most tragic of all. It's the person who sees stupidity happening, feels it in their gut, but stays silent. They think it's not my place or it's not worth the fight. They're not stupid in the traditional sense. In fact, they often know better. But they lack the courage to act. And so they become accomplices, they become the fertile soil where stupidity grows unchecked. Ask yourself, where have I stayed silent when I should have spoken up? What have I tolerated, not because I agreed, but because I was afraid? These four faces: the blind follower, the confident ignorant, the self-justifying victim, and the passive enabler are not caricatures. They are shadows we all carry. And unless we bring them into the light, they will guide our actions without us even knowing. That's the scariest part. Stupidity doesn't feel like stupidity when you're inside it. It feels normal. It feels justified. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Now, don't get me wrong. This isn't about shame. It's about awareness, because the only way to fight stupidity is to start with ourselves. We can't just point fingers at politicians, corporations, or influencers. We have to ask, where am I contributing to the problem? Where am I letting my own lack of reflection steer the wheel? And here's the good news. Self-awareness is the antidote. When we start asking deeper questions, when we pause before reacting, when we challenge our own assumptions, when we choose reflection over reaction, we begin to disarm stupidity. We rob it of its power, we become harder to manipulate, harder to deceive, harder to control. So let me leave you with this. Which face of stupidity do you see most in yourself? And more importantly, what are you willing to do about it? Escaping the gravity of stupidity, how wisdom reclaims the future. By now, we've seen how stupidity isn't just a personal flaw, it's a systemic force. It's everywhere. It doesn't need intention, it doesn't need power, and it doesn't need planning. It just needs inattention. But here's the question that matters more than anything else. How do we escape it? How do we stop being its accomplices, its victims, and sometimes its unknowing agents? The answer begins with a shift in how we define intelligence. The world often rewards cleverness, quick thinking, sharp comebacks, fast answers. But cleverness isn't wisdom. In fact, cleverness without wisdom is just another form of stupidity. It's the kind of intelligence that builds nuclear weapons without asking whether we should use them. It's the kind that writes code to manipulate people's minds through algorithms, then says, we were just optimizing engagement. Without wisdom, intelligence becomes a tool for chaos. So if we want to escape the gravity of stupidity, we have to recenter wisdom, not just as a virtue, but as a daily practice. Wisdom isn't just knowing what's right. It's being willing to act on it, even when it's hard. It's asking uncomfortable questions, saying, when the world demands certainty. It's resisting the urge to be loud when silence is deeper, or to be silent when truth needs a voice. Wisdom is patient, but not passive. It listens more than it speaks, but when it speaks, it cuts through noise like a blade. And here's the thing, wisdom is not born. It's built, it's forged in the fire of failure, reflection, humility, and courage. You don't become wise by reading books alone. You become wise by living, by stumbling, by confronting your own foolishness over and over until you begin to recognize its scent from a mile away. That's the real revolution, not outsmarting others, but outgrowing your own ignorance. So what does this look like in practice? First, develop the habit of deep questioning. Don't settle for the obvious. Ask, why do I believe this? Who benefits if I believe this? What if I'm wrong? These questions are like philosophical armor. They keep stupidity from entering your mind undetected. They force you to slow down, to investigate, to resist the pull of easy answers. Second, surround yourself with people who challenge you. Not just people who agree with you or make you feel smart. Real friends, real thinkers ask the hard questions. They make you uncomfortable, but they also make you grow. If everyone in your circle thinks exactly like you, you're not in a circle. You're in a bubble. And stupidity loves bubbles. They keep reality out. Third, practice intellectual humility. That means admitting when you're wrong. It means changing your mind when the evidence demands it. It means not letting your ego be louder than the truth. The wisest people aren't the ones who are always right. They're the ones who are willing to be corrected. And finally, take responsibility for your influence. Every conversation, every decision, every post you make, these are all ripples. Stupidity spreads through ripples. But so does wisdom. You don't need a massive platform to make a difference. You just need to live in a way that makes stupidity a little less contagious every day. So I'll leave you with one final question. What kind of world are you helping to build? One that rewards wisdom or one that tolerates stupidity? Because every action, every silence, every decision you make moves the needle in one direction or the other. Cipolla was right. The real threat isn't evil, it's stupidity. But now you know how to fight it. And the battlefield isn't out there, it's in here. In your mind, in your habits, in your courage to think when others don't, and in your willingness to ask the one question that stupidity never asks: what is the cost of not thinking? Thank you for thinking with me. Now go be the wisdom in a world that's starving for it.